Okay. We're in section 2.5 where we're going to be solving equations using addition or subtraction. In section prior to this in 2.4, we talked a little bit about this where we were given a equation with a variable, and what we wanted to do was solve the equation by determining which value that variable was. So today, instead of doing the guess and check like we did in 2.4, we're actually going to use what is called inverse operation to help us solve the problem. So inverse operation means that we're going to take two operations that undo each other. Basically what that means is we still want to have that balance on both sides of the scale. We still want balance on both sides of the equal sign. In order to do that, if you're going to do something to one side of the equal sign, you must do it to the other side. So like we talked about in class, our goal was we wanted to get our variable by itself on one side of the equal sign. Now, in order to do that, we have to eliminate some values in order to get the variable on one side of the equal sign. So, in this case, we had the example of x plus 5 equals 12. And what they're doing is what is called the inverse operation. So, if we're saying that we're going to add 5, we're going to take x and add it to 5, what I want to do is I want to subtract both sides by 5 so I can achieve our goal of getting the variable by itself on one side of the equal sign. We're subtracting 5 here because we're doing the opposite operation of what is told us here. We're doing the opposite operation of the addition. The opposite of addition happens to be subtraction. And so we're subtracting by the value that was given. And then in doing that, we take a positive 5 minus 5. That gives me 0. So that kind of cancels it out, which leaves me with x on the left-hand side. And then all I have to do is simply take 12 and minus it by 5, which then gives me a value of 7. And 7 is what x equals, which makes sense because 7 plus 5 equals 12. And that is a way for you to check your work. Here is the more specific name for it. It's called the subtraction property of equalities. Is where you're subtracting the same number from each side of the equation and produces an equivalent equation. This is the example that we just did, and this is an example of what you're not supposed to do, because if you just subtract it by any random number, then there's still a value on the side of the variable which does not achieve our goal. So when you are doing this operation, make sure you add or subtract by the same value. The addition property of inequalities is then adding the same number each side that produces an equivalent equation. So here it says x minus 5 equals 9. Since I got the subtraction operation here, so I see that it's going to be subtraction, so I have to do the opposite operation. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides, so I'm going to add that same number, because a negative 5 plus 5 will give me 0, so that leaves me with x here on the left-hand side, and then 9 plus 5 gives me 14. And then if you want to check that, you substitute in 14 in for x, and so 14 minus 5 does equal 9. Looking at examples A and B, so here I have example A where it's z plus 16 equals 4. So I look at it, the operation that's telling me is addition. So if I have to eliminate that 16, I must subtract both sides by 16, which then cancels this out, leaves me with z on the left-hand side, and then 4 minus 16 gives me a negative 12. Okay? Looking at example B, I have x minus, or 27 equals x minus 14. I have the subtraction towards my number value, so that means I'm going to add 14 to both sides. So that cancels there, so I'm left with x on the right-hand side, and if I go 7 plus 4, it gives me 11, it gives me the 1, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So x has to be 41. Okay? So now if we look here, we get to write an equation using the model, write an equation to model the statement. Sorry. It says your friend is 3 years older than you. You are 15. It says you are 15 years old. How old is your friend? So you know that we can represent x as the age of your friend. You know that he's older than you, so that means if you minus 3, that equals 15. So what I have to do in order to solve for the variable is add 3 to both sides. Cancels it out, so I got x equals 18. So your friend is 18 years old. Okay? Last thing we're going to talk about is solve an equation that's using a couple steps. First step is we have to combine our like terms. So if we look at A, all we're going to concentrate is on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So I have 10 and I have 6 that can be combined. So I'm going to combine those. So it's 10 plus 6 gives me 16 plus k equals 22. Now I get to isolate the variable or get the variable on one side of the equal sign by using either the addition or subtraction properties. So in this case, since 16 is positive, I'm going to subtract 16. And this cancels, so it leaves me with k equals 6. Over here, I have negative 5 minus 11 minus h equals negative 7. So I know I can combine these. So negative 5 minus 11 gives me a negative 16 minus h equals a negative 7. So here, since it's a negative 16, I'm going to add 16 to both sides. So that cancels. So I have a negative h here equals a positive 9. But I have a negative h there. I want to get that to be a positive h. So I'm just going to change the sign for this one, and I'm going to change the sign for that one. So my h actually equals a negative 9. And here's how I can prove that. So if I go negative 5 minus 11 minus a negative 9, Let's see if this equals a negative 7. So this is a cross the line change the sign situation. So it's negative 5 minus 6 minus 11. We knew that was negative 16. Negative 16 plus 9 will give me the negative 7. So it does check out. And that is being able to solve equations using addition or subtraction. Hope this helps. Until next time.